Dream about your enterprise having the most integrity and endurance possible. Hey there, Daniel Hartman, Community Machinery, Sackville, New Brunswick. A friend was asking me the other day about commercial insurance policies, and I tell you, I've learned so much over the years. I had a huge list, and I realized I got to put that into a video. So, number one lesson I've learned: make sure you have the same insurance company for all your policies, whether they're auto, home, business. Find a really good insurance company that can do that. That way, if anything ever happens where you have a house being hit by a car or a building burned down because your product inside it started on fire and there's a debate whether it's a manufacturing error or if it's something to do with the product, you won't have a bunch of insurance companies having a test of wills as far as who's going to be the biggest holdout and waiting for insurance company because no one wants to take responsibility. So that's number one. Second thing, quotes sometimes are really tough to get. So really just hanging in there, getting as many quotes as possible, making sure your insurance company will provide a wide range of things. Moving here to the East Coast, I know some insurance companies did not want marine exposure in terms of no liability insurance for anything that was on a boat whatsoever or a ship. And that could be a major limitation as far as anyone who's in business allowing ourselves the most flexibility possible in terms of we don't know what's coming down the road, whereas why paint ourselves in a corner where even if it's not our particular market, making sure we have good viability in case we need to take a little job on in order to make ends meet sometimes. So that's a huge one. Another one would be checking insurance rates. Now, I've had numerous commercial trucks, and some of them were 12,000, 15,000 pounds, and had proper commercial policies, and they never amounted to any more as far as the liability portion for what I was paying for a personal car. Now, right now, I have my car in my personal name, and one thing I've done is requested to have my personal name and then all my other operating names and business policies written in as far as what that insurance policy covers, as far as being able to use that car for work, being able to do deliveries, being able to do sales calls. All that's clear and above board in terms of having that commercial coverage on that car. Now, the other things you want to watch out for in vehicle policies are any kind of mounted equipment. So if you had a truck with a crane on it or something like a tilt and load to carry machinery, to make sure that stuff is covered on your policy. And that's one of those aspects, again, where having the same insurance provider for vehicles and business liability in terms of if you had a crane on a truck and then is it the business liability insurance when that creates some kind of an accident, or is that the business policy? And that's another really key thing as far as making sure when insurance is needed that it's there, it's available, and it's really responsive. So yeah, there's variances from broker to broker. I know I've got an insurance policy with the Cooperators Insurance. Actually, when I first started, I had insurance with a Farmers Mutual, which, being in a rural area and doing work for farmers, it was really advantageous because it was actually the same insurance we had on the house where the shop was located where I was working. And being with the Farmers Mutual, actually their rates were really competitive, and part of their precedent was really providing service to farmers and being in a rural area doing work for farmers. It was a great way to really connect, and it could also be a way to grow business in terms of being connected in a different community. And right now we have insurance with the Cooperators, which is a cooperative insurance company that its precedent or its mandate is to provide insurance for other cooperatives like Mountain Equipment Cooperative or Gailey Dairy Cooperative. All these different cooperatives own this company, and one of their other mandates is providing insurance to people, things like in remote areas where insurance wouldn't be available. So really making sure people can get coverage. And I know when I first started to try and get quotes through the cooperators, they have their different brokerages that are exclusively selling products from the cooperator group. And I had so much variance from broker to broker. In Ontario, people could not seem to get any kind of competitive rate. Here in New Brunswick, I had to check in with a couple different brokers. One, we had sent emails back and forth, and they just never got around to quoting. Another one, very responsive and is really great in terms of every year checking in to see what our actual gross sales were, because our rates are tied into what our sales are. So it's really great in terms of any small business that has cash flow concerns. Having a broker that's really responsive and checks in every year, and even to be able to ask them those questions up front and to take the time to address those questions, down the road, it's not going to be feeling like an inconvenience to check in and see what's going on. And also, any kind of business where we're looking to do a variety of things and don't know what's coming up next. Like yesterday or the other day, someone was asking me about doing something that had some propane connections on it, which is something I never really thought of going into business as far as anything with propane. So all these other little things as far as, what kind of coverage would I need to have? What kind of waivers? What's going on there? So having an insurance company, having a broker that can really check in with the insurance company to see what their policies are and what kind of additional coverage might be needed or how to have that covered. All great things to keep in mind. Now, years ago, growing up, worked at a farm where the barn burnt down, and the farm in question had a really great relationship with the broker, who I think they grew up farming together. So here was someone where when things did go wrong, there was a strong relationship of trust there, where there weren't questions of making sure that every account or every receipt was accounted for, and it was a pretty flexible thing as far as making sure the operation had continuity and kept going. And that's a really great thing to have. So considering having an insurance company that will stand the test of time, going with someone who's got a good track record would be a big thing, rather than just going for the cheapest rate. Especially thinking about a business that's going to grow, that even having a broker where it's easy to call up and say, hey, we just had an accident. I know years ago on the farm, actually, there was this thing about looking at when things did go through the policy, how often to make a claim, and there seemed to be a lot of things that got banged up or broken down. And some people I know will make a practice of realizing that they're paying into their insurance and wanting to use some of that, what's being paid in. And I've never been someone who's made an insurance claim, but to really know what's viable, what will cause rates to increase and what won't, having a broker that can really work on those things could be a really valuable thing depending on what kind of industry. And one other thing, insurance policies on machinery breakdowns. Now that's a big deal. If you've got a lot of capital equipment and if it's new and you figure, it won't break down, but it's going to be really expensive to repair if it does, or maybe it's older machinery that the parts are going to be hard to find, and it's really going to involve more replacing that machinery or replacing a large component of that machinery, that having a breakdown policy can be a really helpful thing in terms of making sure business can keep going, especially if you're in the middle producing some kind of a big order, to be able to keep going. And that being said, considering even people who I've known that have had auto club insurance or auto club policies for car breakdowns, where you get a tow, you get a rental that's free, and even some personal policies that will cover commercial towing and replace certain vehicles. So even checking into having a really good personal automobile club membership might really help on the business side of things. And it's just one of those ways of keeping good continuity, making sure operations just keep on going. And I think that's my main thoughts on insurance for today. It's one of those things where I've always aspired to be able to insure myself, which I've never really bothered with much in terms of fire and theft, as far as keeping cars locked, keeping valuables out of sight, out of mind, and being smart as far as not being flashing things around and just having a really simple, understated vehicle. I know one of the other challenges with people having tools in vehicles that get broken into is what kind of signage is on the vehicle, and even just the security in general, as far as having a window that's easy to break compared to having a van that's got a partition that makes it hard to get in the back, and not just having regular lock cylinders that you can pound a screwdriver into and turn. So making sure, oh, and the other thing is there's all kinds of crazy videos about lock picking on the internet. It's amazing to know what kind of building security is viable and what isn't. So that's another really cool thing to look at in terms of making sure things are safe. And I know one of the other things that really comes up in insurance policies is if there's any kind of hot work in a building, what kind of construction methods, how to keep things safe that way. So knowing everything's covered, really good due diligence as far as having the right fire extinguishers so that won't void the policy, and having everything up to date, all really supportive stuff that all comes hand in hand. Anyhow, on that note, all the best with your search for insurance. And please like, please subscribe, comment below in terms of your thoughts. Love to do more business videos, and hopefully next time things will be a lot more clear.